In a forgotten corner of ancient Gondwana, a creature stirred alone beneath the red dawn. Her name was Atlascopus. The ground trembled long before the danger came. In the low valleys of ancient Gondwana, where tree ferns reached for a pale sun and rivers cut deep scars into the earth, life moved with caution. Time did not rush in this land. It crept like fog between mountains and coiled beneath the soil like sleeping fire. Every creature knew its place. Every breath had meaning. Among the ridges of damp stone and forest shadow, something rare walked alone. Her steps made no sound, though her size matched the towering trees. She was no hunter. Her teeth were made for leaves and roots. Yet the silence around her broke for no one. Birds watched from high branches but never sang. Smaller creatures crossed her path but never stayed. The air shifted when she passed. The forest knew her. Her name was Atlascopus, though no other creature would ever speak it. She was born beneath a blue star that fell across the sky for 3 nights. Her mother had waded through storms and hunger, protecting the small egg with claws worn from digging. When the hatchling cracked through the shell, the sky opened and rain poured down. Her birth was marked by water and fire, as if the world itself had made space for her. She grew fast, taller than most of her kind, with eyes darker than obsidian and muscles carved from endless travel. She did not belong anywhere, though she had walked everywhere. Other herds moved on, chased by fear or drawn by distant green. But she remained in the valley, stubborn and quiet, watching the ridges beyond with a gaze that never blinked. The world was changing. Trees fell and did not return. Winds grew colder. Once rich soil turned dry. She had known this place in her youth as a world of plenty. Now the ferns browned at their edges. The rivers spoke in whispers. Still, she did not leave. She remembered her kind, dozens of them once moving together like shadows at dusk. Long legs light on the earth, eyes always searching. They had no claws sharp enough to fight, no armor thick enough to block a bite. What they had was speed, intelligence, the patience to endure. But time does not favor patience. One by one, her kin vanished. Some lost the jaws that struck in moonlight, some to hunger. Some simply wandered into the mountains and never came back. She watched each one go. When the last companion fell silent beneath the red leaves, Atlascopus stood alone. The days after were long. She would wake before dawn and climb the ridges for better sight. She ate what roots remained. She circled the same paths her ancestors had walked for generations, as if their prints still warmed the earth. Every night she curled near the nesting hollow carved in stone, her birthplace, not because it offered safety, but because it offered memory. Here, she had first opened her eyes. Here, her mother had sung low and slow in a voice older than time. Now, there was only the wind. The ground spoke again that morning. A low pulse, distant, barely heard, but she felt it in her bones. The mountain to north had stirred, not with snow or rain, but with something deeper. The sky above it burned faint orange, even before the sun climbed over the edge. She stood still for a long time. The leaves around her curled at their tips. Birds flew lower. The insects stopped their hum. Everything waited. Something was coming. Atlascopus turned toward the wind. It no longer smelled of river mist. It carried ash. Change had found her again, not as shadow or silence, but as fire. She would not run. Not yet. The wind grew heavier by the hour. What once moved like a soft breath across the ferns now pressed against her skin with weight. A red haze crept across the sky. The mountain in the north, once hidden behind clouds, now burned with steady orange pulse. Not a flame, but a glow deep from within. The earth itself was warning her. Atlascopus walked along the dry riverbed. Each step left a print that crumbled at the edges. Water had once rushed through this valley. Now it whispered beneath the stones, buried and faint. She lowered her head to drink. Nothing came. Thirst was nothing new. Hunger had become a companion. The roots she once dug for now lay too deep or too dry to feed her. Trees she once reached for were stripped of fruit. Many had withered entirely. The ferns, once thick and endless, thinned into patches of yellow. She searched each day for food. She searched each day for change. Both stayed out of reach. On the fourth day after the tremor, she crossed paths with a new scent. Sharp, cold, wrong. Not the scent of plants or ash. Not familiar. A chill moved through her chest. She raised her head slowly and looked toward the ridge. Nothing moved, but she knew. She walked on, quiet as ever, but now every sound mattered. The shift of leaves, the call of a distant bird, the scrape of stone against stone. She was not alone anymore. Something was hunting, something fast. Her kind had been prey before. The shadows that hunted them wore claws shaped for tearing and teeth sharp as bone shards. But this scent was different. It had the same hunger, the same malice, but it smelled of something colder, older. That night, as she lay beside the stone hollow, the scent returned. Closer. This time it did not drift. It lingered. She rose and moved behind the tall ferns. Her breath slowed. Her muscles tightened. The wind held its breath with her. A shape appeared near the riverbed. Low, slinking. It paused, looked, moved again. Its eyes glowed faint in the dark. A predator. Not large, but fast. Built for silence. Built for the kill. Australovenator. She had seen its kind before. Years ago. One had chased her mother through the tall grass, its claws flashing like knives. It hunted not for food alone, but for pleasure. It took joy in the chase. And now it hunted again. The creature paused near her trail. It sniffed once, twice. Then it turned its head toward the hollow. She had left a trace. The chase would begin soon. She moved before it could react. Her legs, still strong from years of roaming, pushed her through the forest like wind through reeds. Branches snapped behind her. The predator followed. But the forest was her home. She moved between the trees, down into gullies and over stones slick with moss. She jumped a dry stream, landed without sound, and ducked beneath a fallen log. The creature behind her slipped. It growled low. It had lost her path. She waited in silence, heart steady. The growl faded. When the dawn came, the scent was gone. But peace did not return. The land was not only hunted, it was dying. She climbed to a high ridge that afternoon. Below her lay the valley, cracked soil, drying plants, trails left by creatures long gone. The mountain's glow had brightened. Ash now floated in the sky. In the distance, smoke curled upward. Not fire. Not yet, but it would come. She could feel it. She had waited long enough. The forest no longer wanted her. The earth was speaking louder each day. Hunger gnawed at her strength. Predators circled. Nothing remained here but memory. She turned her gaze west. Beyond the ridges, there were plains. Beyond the plains, hills. Beyond the hills, a place she had only seen once as a juvenile. A place where rivers still ran clear, and the plants had not yet browned. It was far, farther than she had traveled in years. But it might still live. She did not fear the distance. She feared what would remain if she stayed. That night, she returned to the hollow one last time. She stepped into it and stood still. The stone still held the shape of her mother. The air still whispered with the sounds of younger days. She pressed her side to the wall and closed her eyes. For a few moments, she was not the last. Then she stepped out. The mountain groaned. The air smelled of fire. And Atlascopcosaurusca began to walk. The green line did not lie. By the end of the day, it had grown from a dream into a forest. Tall trees swayed with real leaves. Water pooled between roots. Ferns unfurled like wings. For the first time in weeks, the ground was soft beneath their feet. Atlascopcosaurusca lowered her head and drank deeply from the stream that wound through the clearing. The water was cold and clean. Beside her, the smaller Leelinosaura drank too. Its body was thinner now, its feathers dulled by ash and dust, but its spirit remained sharp. It had not spoken, not in sounds or gestures, but it had stayed. That was enough. They rested under a canopy of vines. Birds called from the trees. Insects returned to the air. The sky above shimmered blue for the first time in many days. Peace wrapped around them like a blanket. But peace does not last long in a world still bleeding. That night, A sound broke through the trees. Sharp, sudden, not wind. A cry, not of hunger, of pain. Atlas-Scopcosaurus arose. The smaller dinosaur followed. They moved toward the sound with care, each step measured. Leaves shifted, branches cracked. The cry came again, then silence. They reached a clearing lit by moonlight. There, near the edge of a fallen log, lay a young dinosaur. A hatchling, alone, its shell lay shattered beside it. A nest built in haste, barely hidden by brush. No scent of its mother, no others nearby. Just one tiny body, shivering. Atlas-Scopcosaurus stepped forward and sniffed the air. No blood, no sign of attack, just abandonment. The smaller dinosaur tilted its head, then looked at her. She moved closer to the hatchling. It tried to rise but fell, its legs too weak, its eyes too wide. She lowered her head beside it. The creature leaned into her warmth without fear. The decision made itself. She curled her body around it. The smaller dinosaur stayed close, watching. The hatchling pressed into her side. It made no sound, but its breathing slowed. She did not sleep that night. She watched the trees, listened for movement, waited for the sound of claws or growls. None came. Dawn arrived quiet and clean. They moved again, this time slower. The hatchling rode between her shoulder blades. It chirped softly as they walked. The smaller dinosaur ran ahead and circled back, scouting with care. The forest welcomed them, but not all who walked it were gentle. They reached the meadow by midday. The sun cast long beams through the trees. Flowers bloomed between roots. And in the center of it all, a strange sound, laughter, not from mouths, but from movement. A herd, not large, but real. She froze. The smaller dinosaur crept forward, then stopped. Together they watched. Muttaburrasaurus, broad, heavy herbivores, strong limbs, long skulls. They moved in a loose circle, young ones near the center, adults guarding the edge. Their eyes scanned the woods. Their tails swept wide. Atlas-Scopcosaurus stepped forward. Heads turned, feet shuffled, tension rose. She walked slowly, the hatchling still resting on her back. She made no sound. She lowered her head, not submission, respect. The herd parted, not to welcome, but to allow. She passed through them, careful not to startle. The smaller dinosaur followed at a distance. They stayed at the edge of the herd for 2 days. The others did not speak to them, but they did not chase them away. On the 3rd day, trouble returned. It came with fire. Smoke drifted from the east, not from lightning, not from sun. Something below had sparked. Wind carried the smoke ahead of the flames. Birds fled overhead. The ground shook faintly beneath their feet. The herd stirred. Panic. One of the younger Muttaburrasaurus bolted. The others followed. A stampede of muscle and fear. The forest shook. Atlas-Scopcosaurus turned to the smaller dinosaur. It nodded once. They ran. Branches snapped. Ash fell. The hatchling clung tight to her back. Heat pressed against her tail. Flames leapt from tree to tree. They reached the river. The herd had already crossed. Water splashed. Hooves churned mud. She paused at the edge. The fire behind her roared. She stepped in. The current was faster than she expected. Stones slipped beneath her feet. The hatchling cried out. The smaller dinosaur was already halfway across, hopping from stone to stone. It turned back once, then kept going. She pushed forward. 1 step, then another. A tree crashed into the river behind her, sending waves over her back. She lost her footing. The hatchling slipped. She turned, teeth bared, and caught it gently in her mouth before it fell. She lifted it to her back again, moved forward. The water rose to her chest. Her legs ached, but she walked. On the far side, the herd gathered. The smaller dinosaur stood waiting. She stepped from the river and collapsed to her knees. The fire did not cross. Smoke curled in the trees behind them. The hatchling curled into her side. The smaller dinosaur lay beside her. They had survived. The The days that followed felt like a second beginning. The forest had healed faster than expected. Leaves returned. Water ran smooth. The herd settled. The hatchling grew braver, exploring beyond her reach, but never far enough to worry her. The injured one regained strength. It walked again, slow but steady, always staying close to her side. For the first time in many seasons, Atlascopcosaurus felt something she had not allowed herself to feel. Hope. Yet even in peace, the world kept testing her. It began with a sound she knew too well. Distant, deep, echoing through the valley like a whisper that did not want to be heard. The tremor that followed confirmed what her bones had already guessed. The mountain had not finished speaking. She looked toward the north. The glow had returned, faint but growing. Smoke again. The fire that had chased her once was waking. The herd sensed it too. The younger ones cried out. The older ones turned restlessly in place. The river no longer felt wide enough. The forest no longer felt safe. Atlascopcosaurus moved to higher ground and watched the horizon. A dark line crept through the trees far beyond. Not fire this time. Ash. A curtain of it, rolling fast. Not natural. Not wind-blown. Something had broken. She called out, a low sound, firm, measured. The smaller dinosaur looked up. The hatchling froze. The injured one stepped behind her. The herd began to move. She stayed behind. She waited, counting the breaths, until the valley below started to vanish beneath the storm of ash. Then she ran. The smaller dinosaur ran beside her. The hatchling clung tightly to her back. The injured one stumbled at first, then found its pace. They did not follow the herd. Not at first. The path they took was shorter, riskier, but she knew it well. Rocks crumbled underfoot. Trees leaned sharp across narrow ledges. The scent of sulfur filled the air. They had to climb. The ridge ahead rose fast and steep. The ash behind them chased like fog. She led the way. The ground trembled. Once, twice. The sky turned darker. A boulder loosened above and crashed behind them. The smaller dinosaur yelped and leapt aside. The hatchling screamed. She didn't stop. At the base of the final slope, the injured one fell. Its leg gave way. It tried to stand. Failed. Tried again. Atlascopcosaurus turned back. The smaller dinosaur ran to the other side and pressed its body under the fallen one's shoulder. She stepped beside them. Together, they lifted it, not with force. With will, they moved again. Near the top of the ridge, the hatchling slipped from her back. It rolled, legs flailing. A screech echoed above them, not from the ash, from the trees. A shape dropped, clawed, fast. Australovenator, not the same one. Bigger, older, hungry. It lunged for the hatchling. She roared. The sound split the air like thunder. She charged. The predator turned. Too late. She slammed into it, jaw first. It snapped back. Claws raked her side. She spun, tail whipping through air, cracking against its leg. It roared. It lunged again. She met it head-on. The hatchling cried out behind her. The smaller dinosaur jumped between the predator and the hatchling, hissing, flaring its feathers. Atlascopcosaurus struck again. This time the predator fell. It hit the rocks, slid, did not rise. She stood panting. Blood ran down her side. Her legs shook, but she did not fall. The hatchling crawled to her. The smaller dinosaur backed away slowly. The predator did not return. Ash now covered the valley below, but they were above it, safe. She looked back once. The forest was gone, but the sky above them opened. Light broke through the clouds, and the wind was cool again. They had made it. Let me know when you're ready for part 7. Conclusion, 600 to 800 words, the final chapter. You said, the ridge stood high above the broken valley. From its edge, the world seemed quiet again. No fire, no ash, just wind and open sky. But the silence was not the same as before. It was not empty. It was full of memory of loss, of survival. Atlascopcosaurus stood at the highest point and looked down. The forest below had turned black. The river was gone. The trees had fallen. The path she had taken no longer existed. She had crossed it once. She would not need to again. Beside her, the hatchling climbed over her tail and looked at the horizon. It did not understand what had been lost. It only saw the light. The smaller dinosaur lay nearby in the sun, feathers damp with ash and rain. It had not left her side since the mountain shook. It had no herd, no family, no name, but it had stayed. The injured one rested in the grass. The fever had not returned. Its eyes were steady now, its breath calm. 3 lives had followed her up the mountain. She had once thought herself the last. Now she was not. Days passed. The sky stayed clear. Grass grew along the ridge. Small ferns pushed through cracks in the rock. Insects returned. Birds called again. New sounds. Softer sounds. The herd had not returned. Whether they had made it or fallen, she did not know, but she no longer searched for them. The living needed her more than the lost. The hatchling grew faster than expected. It ran between stones, practiced hiding in the tall grass, chased shadows. Its voice grew louder, its steps more sure. She followed but never interfered. It had a path of its own. The smaller dinosaur began building a nest, not for eggs, for supplies, sticks, leaves, berries, feathers. It organized them with purpose, as if expecting more mouths to feed, as if expecting tomorrow. Atlas-Scopcosaurusca began to walk less. She spent more time still, not because she was weak, but because she was full. She had walked far enough. The wind spoke to her in the evenings, not in words, but in the way it moved through the trees, the way it shifted the grass. It reminded her of old voices, her mother, her kin, the ones who had disappeared before the fire came. They had not vanished for nothing. Their strength had not ended with their breath. It had reached her, and now it would reach the next. One morning, the hatchling climbed onto her back and lay flat, sun on its face, eyes closed. The smaller dinosaur lay beside her. The injured one slept nearby. The world was still, and in that stillness she felt peace. Not the peace of forgetting, the peace of remembering, and knowing she had done enough. She had survived. She had protected. She had passed on more than her name. She had passed on a reason for it. Atlas-Scopcosaurusca was no longer just a creature of past. She was the beginning of something new,